religious freedom.
Let's go to John Stanton, Washington bureau chief at BuzzFeed, who's been following all this action there on the Hill today. Good day to you.
It's good to see you.
Let's start with this idea that Justice Alito has completely shifted the Republican caucus. Maybe we should call him Senate Minority Leader Alito. Because, as you know, John, a few weeks ago and for the past several years, everyone in Congress agreed that law referred to human beings have religious rights. No one said anything else. The Supreme Court issues this ruling, and suddenly the Republicans are walking away from the law they had helped write, a bipartisan law. Now they think it applies to corporations, too.
Well, you know, I mean, Republicans for a while have been sort of pushing this notion of what they're calling religious liberty, and that the law was impinging on that. And it's been building more and more. I think that the Hobby Lobby decision certainly has crystallized that for them and has provided them with, you know, a bit of a boost on this. But, you know, Senator McConnell started talking about this a few years ago. John Boehner has been a very big advocate of this notion that Obamacare was somehow impinging on people's religious liberties. So it has been bubbling up, but it certainly has become a much more focused thing for all of them right now.
Let's dig into that, because what you're referring to is certainly true, which is for years anything negative you could find about Obamacare coming in on the side was welcome, open season, right? Obamacare is bad for religion, it's bad for the free market, all of that. And yet it seems to me new to have what we have right now in breaking news is the Senate going on record here. The main reason being offered against this is an endorsement, an embrace of this reinterpretation of the Religious Freedom Act, which, again, to be clear, was written to protect people, not companies.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, it is certainly expanding into this, and you know, this is their reason for voting against it that they're offering up. I think obviously, you know, this vote was pretty political for both sides. You know, you draft legislation and have it on the floor of the Senate in 2 weeks is pretty quick, and so I think this whole thing is you're seeing a bit of a, as you said, you know, the play out of what we're going to see all during the fall of a fight over whether it's women's rights or religious freedom. They're going to find ways to do this battle, I think, until November at least.
John, over the past few days, we've seen the border crisis issue grow to include Jose Antonio Vargas, the famous undocumented American/journalist who went down to Texas to report on the border crisis and then ended up himself detained because he's an undocumented American. He was almost immediately released, though, I mean, a day after, which is pretty fast in this situation, which seems to tie in to me to why the president did not go to the border, because the White House nor Republicans want to put human faces on this. They don't want to create martyrs. They don't want to have us be able to sort of name these folks who are caught up in this, because that would change the conversation immensely.
Yeah, this is not the first time that the administration has frankly made a decision to not hold somebody. There's been a number of protests where Dreamers have gone down to fences outside of Nogales, Arizona, outside of Tijuana, and have essentially tried to get arrested. They've either tried to cross over or they have crossed over and come back. And, you know, Border Patrol is standing there and they just sort of watch. And there is this realization, I think, amongst administration officials that if they were to have held him indefinitely or really put him into the deportation process, it would have exploded, and it would have given, you know, the movement a single leader of sorts then that would not have been helpful to the administration or to Republicans, frankly. I think that they want to avoid photo ops at all costs in any manner at all.
Well, and thus far, the president is being judged, it seems, fairly harshly for his approach. There's new polling out showing that 58% disapprove of his handling of this border crisis. Unless do you think that those are all people coming from the right and saying we're not sending folks home quickly enough? That number actually includes 54% of Latinos. So there seems to be a good bit of criticism of the president's handling coming from the left, coming from immigration activists, and you've even seen, you know, potential presidential candidates like Martin O'Malley coming out to the left of where the president is.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're starting to see that a lot on the Hill. You know, you have members of Congress, you know, Minority Leader Pelosi, for instance, has said that she believes that if they change the 2008 law, they should make it possible for Mexican children to stay longer and to get into the process instead of being sent back. And they're really starting to become at odds with the administration. And, you know, you're also seeing, though, rank-and-file sort of moderate white Democrats in the Midwest are also looking at this and saying you need to send the kids back. It's not, it has become much more of a sort of the left of politics versus the right and a large part of the middle, frankly, which is, I think, a remarkable change in how people are looking at the issue of immigration.
Yeah, I think that's right. Shifting gears a little bit here, John, to an interview that
that I'm sure you saw last night. Hillary Clinton was on Jon Stewart, and he, of course, took the opportunity to ask her about running for office, only like Jon Stewart can. Here's how it went.
Let me ask you a question. Do you like commuting to work, or do you like a home office? What's your...
You know, I've spent so many years commuting, I kind of prefer a home office.
All right. Do you have a favorite shape for that home office? Do you like it? do you like that office? Let's say, would you like that office? Would you like to have corners, or would you like it not to have corners? I don't know.
You know, I think that the world is so complicated. The fewer corners that you can have,
Some pretty good stuff there. Really creative way to ask that question. But as they got more into the interview, John, she quickly made a pivot to income inequality, something that she's really trying to get right, especially after some of the gaffes that were made about the Clintons being dead broke. Her response was, actually, we've been very, very lucky in our life. And it seems like she's doing her very best to try to connect with the American people, to try to prove that she does understand them. And I think back on a moment when I remember her being so real and so authentic. It was the morning after the New Hampshire primary where she broke down and she got really emotional and she shed a tear. And I think it was a time for many of us where we saw the real Hillary Clinton. And I'm not saying that she needs to sit here and cry in front of the cameras, but I think when she to be so perfect, that's exactly when she becomes very distant to the American people.
Yeah, this has been a problem for her, I think, throughout her career, where she becomes a bit defensive sometimes, and she starts to sort of enclose on herself. And when she lets that go and she acts sort of like herself, that's when people, you know, really start to like her. I think of that sort of famous video of her dancing in South Africa and drinking shots of whiskey, right? that really humanized her, and people really liked that, and they like to see that in their politicians. And for someone like Hillary Clinton, who everybody is aware of, they sort of know her, most people have already got an opinion of her. Getting those opinions to change is she's going to have to rely on these sort of humanizing efforts to try to change anybody out there that may not, you know, be solid in their ways and how they look at her.
Does it always come back to shots of whiskey for you, buddy?
Absolutely, always comes back to shots of whiskey for me.
There's also a structural piece to this. We spend so much time talking about Hillary as a human being, right? But the structural landscape here is she has decided, her team has decided to put her out here on the book tour. There aren't any other candidates or potential would-be candidates doing the same kind of tour. And at a certain point, John, you got to wonder whether, no matter how many books have been sold, whether this was the right thing for someone that has faced criticism for trying to be over inevitable last time.
Yeah, there is definitely some of that. I think, you know, her book tour hasn't, I think, gone as well as they had hoped. It's been eclipsed by, you know, the border crisis and by what's going on in Israel and Gaza Strip right now. And I think that, you know, she's definitely probably looking at this and having some second thoughts. But, you know, we're still so far out from the election. I'm not sure if it helps or hurts in the end, frankly.
Well,
you know,
yeah, I mean, Jon Stewart made the good point, Ari, last night, that no one really wants to read the book. All people want to know is, are you running for president or not? Which I think is funny, but also there's some truth to that as well.
I think that's a fair point, Abby. I've been reading the book. I'm not done with it, and I will reserve my commentary and judgment until I finish what is a long book. John Stanton, thank you very much for your time today.
Sure.